Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Talking Cardboard. As always, my name is Cory, and this is the second segment in my top 50 favorite board games of all time, the 2021 edition. This is going to be a little bit of an extended special edition where I go over 10 games this time, rather than 5 games like the last segment. So in this segment, I'm going over my favorite games from number 45 down to number 36. Let's get started. Okay, and like I said in the intro to this video, I am going over 10 games in this segment rather than only 5 games like in the first segment. So I need to speak a little bit faster, go a little bit faster, and try to get through this one as quickly as possible for you all so the video isn't too long. So right away, let's get into game number 45. Okay, and game number 45 on the list was number 43 last year, so it's staying pretty steady in the same positioning on the top 50 favorite games of all time. This game I haven't played for a while, but it plays really well with high player counts. I really enjoy it with 4, 5, 6 people. Anything less than 4, like 2 to 3 people isn't as fun. So it's a little bit harder to get this game to the table, but when we do, we have a blast every time. And this game is Ethnos. So in Ethnos, it's very simple. You're either doing one of two things on your turn. You're either taking a card to your hand, or you're playing a band of cards down onto the table to try to gain influence on the board. It's got a map that you're trying to take influence of all these different regions, and it's an area control, an area majority style game, but with very, very simple gameplay. Like I said, you're just looking at your hand of cards. All the different cards have different creatures on them that have special abilities, and when you play down a band of cards, it can be a band of only 1 card, or 2, sometimes 3 or 4 or 5, and depending on the size of the band you play, the more points you get for scoring. And if you have the majority of your tokens in different locations on the board, you get to score those locations for victory points. Whoever has the majority gets the most amount of points for the different regions, and so on and so forth. So you're just trying to get the most points by the end of the game. Another really fun aspect to this game is that you don't know when the end of the rounds will trigger. It's got this cool mechanism where you shuffle in some dragon cards into the bottom half of the deck, and when the third dragon card gets pulled is when the round ends. So it really creates some tension and some anxiety because you don't know when the round is going to end, so you don't know whether or not to just collect that one extra card to create a larger band and then hopefully wait for it to get back to your turn to play down that band of cards before the third dragon comes over, because if it pops over, then the round ends immediately. So it creates some tense decision making where you might want to just play down what you've got before that third dragon comes, just to get as many points as you can before you miss out on them. So that is Ethnos. All right, and game number 44 is brand new to the list this year, and it is a Pandemic game. It is my favorite version of Pandemic, but no, it is not the original Pandemic. This is World of Warcraft, Wrath of the Lich King, a Pandemic system game. So one of the newest, if not the newest, Pandemic game to come out recently, and like I said, it is my favorite. In the World of Warcraft edition, you've got these minions that are flooding the map, and you're trying to go to these different locations to fight them off. In this version of the game, you use some dice to fight them off, kind of like in the Fall of Rome edition to Pandemic also. You've got some dice combat, which is kind of fun. It's kind of cool, and you can manipulate the dice to be in your favor as well. So it isn't just straight luck. You've got some strategy involved with it too. All the different heroes feel completely asymmetric and powerful in their own way, and you are trying to complete these quests, all in the meanwhile extinguishing these fires, I call them, all over the map, where, not literal fires, but these minions that are just flooding these different regions. So you have to keep the minions at bay before they become too overrun, all in the while completing these quests. And if you can complete 3 quests, then the Wrath of the Lich King happens. So the Lich King comes out, and you need to go to his location to defeat him as the final boss to beat the game. So really cool. Like I said, the powers feel really cool in this game. The different heroes feel really fun, and that dice mitigation, dice rolling, and combat on the different locations, that adds just enough twist to the Pandemic system where it feels different enough versus any other version of the game. So that is World of Warcraft, Wrath of the Lich King, a Pandemic system game. Alright, and my number 43 on the list is a 2-player only game, and one of my favorite 2-player only games I have ever played. It's got some really cool asymmetric powers that each player gets to choose before the game starts, and It's a pretty simple game at heart, but one that provides a lot of strategy, and this game is Santorini. So in Santorini, like I said, each player takes on the role of a different person with a different god with different superpowers, and depending on what their special ability is, that'll really change the way the game feels. You are running around the map trying to build these towers and trying to jump on different levels of towers to try to get to the top. If you get to the top of one of the towers, you win the game. But what's really cool about this is that you need to build the towers up, almost like creating steps for your hero to jump, or for your god to jump on one onto the next and work your way up to the top to eventually get to the third level of a tower. It's really difficult to do that though, because your opponent can run over and build a fourth level to one of the towers before you're able to get up to the top, and that fourth level is a rooftop. And when they cap off the rooftop, it completely takes that tower out of the game for the rest of the game, so you can't utilize that to win the game any longer. The special abilities feel very unique, very different from one another. You really want to try to exploit your special ability to the best you can to try to win the game, but every single time, if you just shuffle in all the god cards and just deal out a couple to each player, and you just choose one that you want to play at the start of every game, each game will feel completely different. So that is Santorini. All right, and number 42 on the list was number 38 last year, so still staying strong, like a lot of these games here, in a similar location on the list. This is a really fun party game called When I Dream. I think I like it more than anybody else I've ever played the game with. I just like the game that much. I don't know why, it's just got that appeal to me, but in When I Dream, one person is blindfolded, and the rest of the people are saying one-word clues to try to have them guess what the card is in the middle of the table. The one-word clue can't be the word that's on the card. Like if it's an apple and the card says apple, you can't say your clue can't be apple. But for example, you could say red or green or fruit and try to get the blindfolded player to guess it correctly. But that's only half the game, because some of the players are the good people, or they call them the fairies in this game, where you try to have the blindfolded person guess the card correctly. Because if they guess the card correctly, you get points for that. But there are also some boogeymen in the game who are trying to get the blindfolded person to guess the cards incorrectly. So they're giving bad clues. Not completely outlandish clues, because then the blindfolded person can kind of pull them out of the crowd and know that they're just trying to mess with them, but close enough clues just to kind of throw them off a little bit. So if somebody's like green and another person says red, and then the third person says fruit and the card is apple, if I'm a boogeyman, I might say vegetable or pepper, or something to get them to think of green peppers or red peppers or vegetables rather than fruits. So then they might not guess apple, because if you're a boogeyman and they don't guess the card correctly, then you get points for that too. So it's cool. Everybody takes one turn being the blindfolded person, and after everybody's gotten that one turn, then the game is over. Whoever has the most points wins. But it's not really about the points. Like in most party games, it's just a lot of fun to play. It generates a lot of laughs, and yeah, it's pretty nerve-wracking being the blindfolded person, but you end up doing better than you think you would do. So it's not one of those games where you get too discouraged. It's just a game where everybody has fun. So that is When I Dream. All right, and number 41 on the list was number 34 last year, so just dropping a little bit, just dropping 7 places, but still staying strong. And this game is Rajas of the Ganges. Rajas of the Ganges is one of my all-time favorite dice worker placement games, where all the workers you're placing on the board are all just dice. What's really cool about Rajas of the Ganges is that the dice you are placing are also have different colors, and the colors matter in this game, because some of the different locations require different colored dice to either generate the income or generate the points. And another cool thing in Rajas is the end game trigger is triggered by these 2 tracks that are going around the outside of the board. You've got one track, which is an income track, and another track going the opposite direction, which is a victory point track, or a prestige track. And as soon as those 2 tracks meet and cross each other, that triggers the end of the game. Everybody else gets one more turn around the table, and whoever has surpassed those two tracks the farthest wins the game. So it's a really cool endgame system. You're seeing that happen in some other newer games too, like Ark Nova, the new zoo game that's coming out here soon. I know that has a similar mechanism to where the 2 tracks meet and cross, and however far they cross, the furthest person wins, that sort of thing. But I really like that idea, and I really like my dice worker placement games, and especially dice that where the colors of the dice have meaning. So that is Rajas of the Ganges. All right, and my number 40 game was number 31 last year, so still staying strong like everything else here, but this is just a very simple abstract game, and actually my number one favorite game on my essentials game list. So this is the game that I think is the most essential game that any gamer could have in their collection. Yeah, it's number 40 on my all-time favorite games list, but it's just one that I think all people could have in their collection and be happy with it, and pull out for different reasons, pull the game off the shelf at different times and different points with different groups for all different reasons. So this game is Azul. Last year, I saw that I put Azul Summer Pavilion on the list, which is the third version of Azul, and that is probably still my favorite version of Azul, but this year I just put the first version of Azul on the list because I think that is the most accessible, is the one that is most readily available, that you can probably find in Target and Barnes & Noble and other big box stores, so it's a great introduction to the Azul system. In Azul, it's just simple tile placement. You've got these nice heavy chunky tiles that are in these different markets in the middle of the table, and on your turn you can choose all of one color from either one of the market tiles, or you can choose all of one color of tile from the center of the board and then place them on your own personal player board. And it's just one big puzzle, complex puzzle that you're trying to solve on your own player board, and you get points for solving the puzzle in different ways. So when you fill up a complete row, you get to take one of those tiles and place it on one of the other spots to the right hand side of your board, and whatever tiles that new tile is touching, you get points for that. So it's just a nice, simple, light tile placement game that just works for all different groups of people. So that is Azul. All right, and my number 39 game was number 26 last year, so has dropped quite a bit. I did play this game recently with my family over the holidays, and they really like it. I mean, we enjoy this game every single time. It is social deduction. It has a lot of screaming and yelling at each other, a lot of people throwing punches, and not literally punches, but there is a lot of fighting and feuding that generates from this, but it's all in good fun, and I have fun every single time I play it. And this game is the Resistance Avalon. So I specifically put Avalon on the list rather than the first Resistance because I think I like Avalon a little bit better. It introduces a couple new cards to the system that adds a little bit of a twist in the gameplay, so it's not as samey every time, but the regular Resistance is just super fun also. So any version you can get your hands on, I would definitely highly recommend it. But yeah, in the Resistance Avalon, each player gets one card at the start of the round. They secretively look at the card to see whether or not they're a good person or a bad person. The card will either be blue or red, depending on what side of the team you're going to be on. And at the beginning of the round, everybody closes their eyes, and you've got one person basically saying all the spies can open their eyes, or all the bad people can open their eyes and look at who all the other bad people are, so you're on the same team. Then they close their eyes and everybody gets to open their eyes. So only the bad people know who is on their team, but the good people have no clue who the bad people are or who the other good people are. So they have no clue what's going on, and basically you are taking turns sending people on missions to try to weed out who the bad people are. So it's just really kind of neat how you play the system, and kind of lying to each other's faces and seeing the reaction of people when they thought you were good, but in the end it turned out you were bad, and it's just a ton of fun. So that is the Resistance Avalon. All right, and my number 38 was number 22 last year. This game is I just really love the heck out of this game, and it does not hit the table enough, and I don't know why. But I mean, even the theme is clever, the gameplay is clever, the main mechanisms that are core to the gameplay is just really unique and really cool and fun, and it is Smartphone Inc. So in Smartphone Inc., you're almost running your own smartphone company, your own smartphone empire, and you are deciding on basically what price you want your cell phones to be to try to sell them to different markets around the world. Some people want cheaper cell phones, some people want more expensive cell phones. You might not be able to sell a higher volume at a higher price, but you might get more money in the end because you're selling them for a higher price versus if you sell many at a low price. But some regions of the world only want those cheaper cell phones or only want cell phones with particular technologies. So you're investing resources, investing your time into these different technologies and these different apps basically that you can put onto your phone, so then they become appealing to those different markets. So it's really cool just to try to make your own smartphone company that appeals to different regions around the world and try to get the most money generated for your company that you can. The main mechanism that I love in this game that you don't see done in hardly any game, but it's just really smart, clever, and fun, is that it's got a system where you have these two boards that you're keeping secret from everybody. These two little, they almost look like little tablets or little smartphones, and each of them have like 6 different app icons on it. And you have to overlap them in a way to where at least one of the squares is being covered, but you can cover more than one square. And that's good for various reasons too. I'm not going to get into the complete rules overview, but there are certain situations where you want to cover more apps than not. But that just kind of depends on the situation. But and after you configure the boards how you want, you then reveal what your actions are going to be. It's just really cool, really innovative, really fun, and actually a game that I wish would hit the table more often. So that is Smartphone Inc. All right, and number 37 was number 30 on my list last year, and this is one of the very first worker placement games I ever played. A very simple worker placement game, and one of those games you hear about a lot of channels recommending that this is the gateway game for worker placement. The game to teach others what worker placement is all about, to get them more invested in what that worker placement mechanism means. And this game is Lords of Waterdeep. So Lords of Waterdeep, it's got a lightly pasted D&D theme pasted onto it, Dungeons and Dragons, but just very lightly themed. The theme doesn't really matter in this game at all, but like I said, it is worker placement, so you're sending your different agents or workers onto the board to different locations. You are gathering intrigue cards on different locations to add to your hand, which will do special abilities later on. You're going to different areas on the board to gather resources, and there's other areas that'll gather you these quest cards that you can put in front of you, and the entire time you're trying to hire, or I guess I shouldn't say resources, they look like resources, but really your resources in this game are hiring these different like merchants and wizards and warriors and different types of people that you're hiring to help you go on these quests. Depending on what the different quest requirements are in front of you, those are the different types of workers and warriors and wizards and different types of cubes that you're trying to recruit onto your side, so that at the end of the round, you can actually fulfill one quest at a time if you have the required number of people that you need to go on that quest. The quest will give you like money and different abilities and ultimately victory points. Whoever has the most victory points in the end wins. So the quests are essential to that, but there are just various different ways to go on these quests to ultimately win the game. So it is a lot of fun, very light, very simple. Its only expansion is one of the most essential expansions, in my opinion, that you need for any base game, because it just adds that much to the game and that much, other worker placement spots and variety to the game that I think you need if you're going to play the game more than a few times. But with that expansion, this game just really sings. So that is Lords of Waterdeep. All right, and the last game on my list here today is number 36. It was number 24 last year, so again, a common theme here. A lot of games dropping down, and it's not just all brand new games that are being injected into the top part of my list here. It's just a lot of movement that happened this year, so a lot of cool things to see with the list. But this game is a nice light cooperative game that's really fun during Halloween, but it's also a lot of fun any time of year. And this game is Horrified. Like I said, it's a cooperative game, and it's got the Universal Monsters license to it. So you've got like the Creature from the Black Lagoon and Frankenstein's monster and his bride and the Wolfman and all these like Dracula and all these different monsters that you are trying to defeat. The thing I really like about Horrified is that each monster has a completely different win condition to defeat them. So each monster feels completely asymmetric. You also have these asymmetric player powers that each player gets to be at the beginning of the game. So it kind of enhances your gameplay in a specific way. And that's pretty normal to see, like in Pandemic and other cooperative games. That's fairly normal. But what makes Horrified unique is that the monsters you're trying to defeat are also asymmetric. So everything in this game is just completely asymmetric. It's also cool because it's kind of like plug and play. You can plug in one monster to make the game really easy, or you can plug in 2 or 3 monsters to make the game really difficult. So you can kind of plug and play to the amount of difficulty you want the game to be. So if you're playing with a bunch of new players, you might only want to try to defeat 1 or 2 monsters. If you're playing with a lot of experienced players, you can try to defeat 3 or even 4 monsters and see if it's even possible to do that. So you can really tailor the difficulty. The different combinations of monsters together in every game will make the game feel that much different too. It would be kind of cool if they had even more monsters to put into the mix and more maps and that sort of thing, but they just came out with another version called the American Monsters version to the game. Both of them look really similar, and I think Horrified American Monsters will kind of give me what I was looking for, with additional monsters and a different board to play on, but also it being a standalone separate game. So it's not necessarily really an expansion that I can inject into my version of the game, but it kind of looks like a different experience. Kind of the expansion experience I was looking for, but in a different standalone game. So I might have to give that one a try here soon. That one looks really cool, but honestly, both versions of the game look very similar and very, very fun. And if you like cooperative games, this one is not a very difficult one to get into. It's not a difficult game to learn, not a difficult game to teach, but it is fun that the game changes every time on your win conditions. So every game should feel pretty much completely different. So that is Horrified. All right, so that pretty much wraps up today's list. Those were games 45 down to 36. So a nice chunk of 10 games there, getting closer to my #1 favorite game of all time. I hope you all stay tuned for future segments. I'm going to try to be pumping these out as quickly as I can to try to get them or finish them by sometime in January coming up here. And I haven't really discussed it with the other members of the Talking Cardboard crew to see how many of their top games they want to share on the interwebs here, but I am going to discuss that with them and see if they at least want to give their top 10 of either the year or their top 10 of all time to see how they compare with my list here. So I hope you all have been enjoying the list so far and tuning in, and leave in the comments below what your favorite games are of all time and if they compare with my list or if they're completely different, if I'm completely wrong, which happens a lot. So tell me if I'm wrong, tell me if I'm right, preferably tell me if I'm right, but either way is fine. But until next time, you all have fun gaming.